Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. If you watched me on Dennis Prager's program earlier today, I basically wanted to go through some of the subjects that I didn't get an opportunity to touch on. And as I broadcast or record this podcast this evening, there's been more breaking news that I want to get to, and I'm going to go back to my theme, fighting back against the resistance. And again, I would encourage you to say resistance, because if you say resistance, kind of like you're a French person and pretend like you have one of those mustaches, you'll really get into this podcast. You'll really get into the fight, because obviously, listen, we're heading into the Christmas season. Nobody wants to really think about politics right now. But the truth of the matter is, this is what God has put on my heart, because I want every American to be free, politically, spiritually, and financially. That is what I believe my calling is. And so I think that for those of you that are interested in listening to podcasts like this, you have to be prepared and know what the left is up to. And I want to share with you that the resistance continues on. There's a story that I already have in my mind. I want to make sure that I don't forget. But so, Gabe, do me this favor. Will you remind me? Because I thought I had a pen on me in front of me, and I do not. Actually, I do. I have a highlighter. So Biden, I want to make sure that I talk about this, because Biden has been selling off or is auctioning off parts of the southern border wall. So I want to talk about that, because this is part of the resistance. Here's what you need to know. The resistance against President Trump has not stopped. It continues, and it will continue. And this is what makes this second term so monumental and so historic, besides the fact that it's non-consecutive terms. It's everything that Trump had to go through to get back to this point. Let me share this story with you that broke just earlier today. You guys know that Christopher Wray, FBI director, has said that he is going to resign before Trump takes office. And obviously that's because President Trump was putting the pressure on him already naming his nominee, Kash Patel. And as a result of that, what a coincidence. All of a sudden, we find out the answers to a question that we've been asking ever since J6 occurred, or when the Biden administration started arresting J6, mostly peaceful protesters and now political prisoners, many of them. Were there any UCs? Were there any confidential human sources, as they're called in the FBI? So undercover FBI agents. And then we got stonewalled, frankly, by Christopher Wray and even Inspector General. I mean, to me, it's kind of funny that this Inspector General has just now issued this information, and it's just now been issued since Christopher Wray has decided to resign. So all of a sudden, Christopher Wray decides to resign. And then what do you know? We get this information that, oh, yes, in fact, there were some FBI spies at the J6 rally. Here's a summary from Just the News. The FBI had 26 confidential human sources, CHSs, in D.C. on January 6th, with a majority of those individuals entering the restricted area on Capitol Hill during the disturbances of that day. So my, isn't that weird? So these confidential human sources entered the restricted area on the Capitol buildings. One has to wonder if they caused or incited any riots. One has to wonder if they ushered any of the peaceful protesters that were there in, or incited or inflamed any of the people that got involved in some of the mishaps. Not everybody there was perfect. We absolutely know that. We get that. We understand that. But I think that these people have been over persecuted. I want a blanket pardon of every single one of these people. And speaking of pardon, we'll get to the record-breaking clemencies commutations that Joe Biden has done, and that has gotten some people outraged and some people not so much. But anyway, we'll talk about that. 1,500 commutations, and then 39 pardons, including 3 Chinese spies. How ironic. That's a little weird, right? Anyway, we'll get to that. So here's the deal. So you had 26 spies, FBI spies on J6 on Capitol Hill in restricted areas, according to Just the News. The Department of Justice of the Inspector General report mentioned this, or had that inside of the report. Quote, here's part of the report. We determined that of the 26 CHSs who were in D.C. on January 6th in connection with the events on January 6th, 4 entered the Capitol during the riot. I wonder if they were wearing Trump gear, MAGA gear, right? An additional 13 entered the restricted area around the Capitol. I wonder if they were leading the charge or inciting people. Hey, let's go, encouraging people. Let's go. You know what I'm saying? You got to wonder. Which was a security perimeter established in preparation for J6. So could there have been FBI agents that encouraged Trump supporters that were there to kind of run over the police? You have to wonder. All right, and nine other entered a restricted area, nine neither entered a restricted area nor entered the Capitol or otherwise engaged in illegal activity, according to the report. None of the confidential human sources who entered the Capitol or a restricted area has been prosecuted to date. Now, why wouldn't they be prosecuted? Why wouldn't they be prosecuted? And I would suggest they weren't prosecuted because they had immunity to set up J6 protesters. I mean, that's just me. That's my opinion. The report further found that several of those, excuse me, I just lost my place. The report further found that several of those CHSs provide the Bureau with information on the January 6th electoral certification process ahead of time, and that at least one had been in contact with members of the far-right Oath Keepers group. So I wonder if there was a plant inside of the Oath Keepers group. Remember the Gretchen Whitmer kidnap story that was a fake story? We actually know Stephen Friend. We've interviewed Stephen Friend. He was one of the FBI agents sent to arrest the guys that were allegedly involved in this plot to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. And I mean, he found out later it was basically a setup, but they were warming them up, so to speak, the FBI agents to, I mean, straight up take on these guys and take them out if they had to, in order to make this thing look real. That's how disgusting the FBI was. Stephen Friend and Kyle Seraphin are real heroes. Those guys have some real courage, and all of those guys that were whistleblowers for the FBI. So you have to wonder if the same type of thing was done here. Notably, the OIG found no evidence that the FBI had deployed undercover agents within the crowds. Do you believe them? I'm sorry. Do you believe them? I don't. We found no evidence in the materials we reviewed or the testimony we received showing or suggesting that the FBI had undercover employees in the various protest crowds or at the Capitol on January 6th. And why were they in the restricted area? I'm just wondering. But anyway, I do think that this is more ammo for President Trump, obviously, metaphorically speaking. Pardon every single J6 protester. No, I wouldn't. For me, or the guy broke the glass. This guy punched the cop. And, you know, I get it. Listen, I really do believe typically that if you hit a law enforcement officer, if indeed someone did that, you should pay the price for that. I don't think you should ever attack law enforcement, ever. I'm not sure that there's ever a circumstance where you need to do that unless literally you were so innocent and a law enforcement officer, whatever. I'm not even going to say that. You just comply so that you don't die. I put it that way, but knowing that these people literally set these people up, knowing that the National Guard was called by Donald Trump and was supposed to be deployed. The National Guard was held off for a couple of hours. It's almost as if they wanted the J6 protesters to do as much damage as possible before the National Guard showed up. And now we know that after Trump said, listen, make sure these National Guards are here, the National Guard were called upon, and then they waited a couple of hours as if they were waiting for the damage to be done before they finally showed up. And that isn't that's the leadership. That's not the actual National Guards themselves. But just so that you understand, the resistance continues. But this is good news when it comes to Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray being out, I think Kash Patel is going to be the next FBI director. And I think he's exactly what we need, because what we don't need is a DOJ that is focused on spying on American citizens. We need these guys to be law enforcement agents. If they're not going to destroy that agency, we need them to be law enforcement agents that are going to serve the people of the United States, serve under the presidency, under the executive branch, but not go after and spy on American citizens, or doing counterintelligence or doing surveillance on American citizens. That's just crazy. They need to go back to their their pre 9/11 days when they were law enforcement. They were federal law enforcement, and that's what they need to go back to. I would prefer, as Stephen Friends mentioned, I want them to be disarmed. I don't think that they should have guns anymore. I really like that. I think they should have to work with local sheriffs in order to, in order to arrest and all that kind of stuff. I think that makes sense so that they don't become bloated and powerful. We'll have to see what Kash Patel does, but I have full confidence that Kash Patel will clean up this agency. And again, I am talking about our thing today is fighting back against the resistance. All right. So there still is a resistance that exists. So I just want to bring you some headlines and talk about those really quick and make sure that you are up to speed. Another thing is this Joe Biden. Joe Biden granting these pardons, 1,500 people that have been pardoned, or not pardoned, excuse me, had their sentences commuted. So that isn't a full pardon. You know what I mean? So their record won't be completely wiped off the map, but they get to walk away. And those are 1,500 people that were allegedly arrested during COVID, basically serving on house arrest. I'm trying to find the story here, but this is the largest day of commutations, I believe, in American history. I think to put it into perspective, here it is. For comparison, Donald Trump pardoned 143 people and commuted the sentences of another 94. So less than 240 people, Donald Trump, between commutations and pardons combined during his first term in office. So that's in 4 years. So Joe Biden in his first term, and actually during his last couple of months, again, 1,500 pardons and 39 individuals that he says were involved in non-violent offenses. But if you look at whitehouse.gov, and this is a post from Benny Johnson on X, Joe Biden pardoned 39 people today, including Chinese spies and an individual convicted of possessing child pornography. That's weird. That's weird. Why would you pardon Chinese spies? I wonder if they know something. Really, we all knew this. Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, going out, Joe Biden using his crackhead son to go out and make a bunch of money. There's no telling who's involved. All of these 1,500 people, I haven't looked at all of the 1,500 people involved in this. I doubt that Joe Biden has. He said that these people basically paid their price. They did their time. The president, here's a statement from the White House. The president has issued more sentence commutations at this point in his presidency than any of his recent predecessors at the same point in their first term. So this guy's just trying to build legacy. Now that Kamala Harris is out the way, he's trying to build legacy and at the same time undermine President Trump coming into the White House. But I think this is just vanity for him. This is, after everybody was upset last week that he pardoned his son, Hunter Biden actually pardoned himself, or in the last couple of weeks, pardoned himself for, over a decade, basically, so that you can find out what Joe Biden, with the dirt that Joe Biden was doing with his son. The Democrats flipped out on that. Many of them suggested that, we really believe, I don't believe they believed him. But anyway, that's what many of them said, because they liked having that sense of moral superiority over those of us on the right. But unfortunately, Joe Biden pardoned Hunter like we all knew he would do. And so the left lost that narrative. But now 1,500 people that are commuted and basically one fell swoop, and 39 people with full pardons, including 3 Chinese spies and apparently one that loved kiddie porn. Woo. Okay. All right. Now, in other news, and again, I want to share again that this is part of, we're talking about the resistance, and I want to get to that, but this is some of the new news that has happened since I have been off the air earlier today. So I want to make sure that I cover any of that particular breaking news that might be occurring this late Thursday evening as we head into the weekend and we get closer and closer to Christmas. I mentioned earlier that Trump was named Times Person of the Year. He was able to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange, the first president to be able to do that, win Times Person of the Year and ring the bell for the New York Stock Exchange. I think since Reagan, or at least I'm not sure if Reagan won Times Person of the Year back in the day. But Trump is the first president since Ronald Reagan to ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange to get this day started off. I think last year Taylor Swift was named the Times Person of the Year. She didn't show up, but the person a person rang the bell on her behalf, I believe, one of the Times editors, if I recall correctly. All right, and some more news. Because the resistance continues. The resistance against Donald Trump, the resistance against freedom, the resistance against conservatism, the resistance against cutting down the size and scope of this bureaucratic behemoth that exists in Washington, D.C. You had Christopher Rufo, for those of you that may have missed it, and wrote a column earlier, how to fight to the coming fight to abolish DEI. And he's been talking to the incoming Trump administration and trying to give them a solid plan on how to eliminate DEI. And he has some really good ideas. He talks about the first step is you got to understand how DEI bureaucracies were first embedded into the federal government. There were 3 executive orders, one by President Barack Hussein Obama, who issued Executive Order 13583, which laid the groundwork for many of the national diversity, quote unquote, initiatives. And then Joe Biden signed two additional executive orders when he became president: Executive Order number 13985 and Executive Order 14035, which entrenched DEI principles even further into the federal bureaucracy, and he embedded DEI in basically all government entity, all of these government bureaucracies. I mean, Joe Biden went for the gusto to compare, even though, and I don't think there would have been a Biden without Obama, frankly. There's a reason why people didn't want Joe Biden to be president for 40 years. They knew he was a plagiarist. They knew he was a liar. They knew he was a fake. They knew he was a fraud. But the perfect storm came in 2020 with COVID, and that gave the Democrats an opportunity to do some rigging. But to put things into perspective, when it comes to DEI, you guys may recall, I mentioned this before, that the DEI under Barack Obama, language grants, all that kind of stuff, are grants related to DEI. There was about $27 million spent, I think, during Barack Obama's, I'm not sure if it's his entire administration, I can't recall, or the latter part of his administration. Well, Joe Biden and his first term, you had about $1 billion in DEI grants, DEI related grants that went out. So you jump from $27 million to $1 billion. So Christopher Rufo says, first understand it. These are the executive orders that have to be reversed. And then he says the cabinet officials must work with Trump to rescind Obama and Biden's executive orders. And then in their place, Trump should sign an order, he says, advancing the principle of colorblind equality. So you get rid of the DEI, you implement the principles of colorblind equality right away. And then you talk about treating all individuals equally to their merit rather than unequally according to their ancestry. So it becomes totally merit-based, not skin color-based, not based on who your ancestors were, none of that stuff. It's merit-based when you're working. Listen, you want to be a racist off clock, you know what I'm saying? That's up to you. But when it comes to our institutions, the only way that this great nation can last, the only way that we remain united, a United States of America, is if when we're talking about our institutions or within our institutions, we can recognize the past, but say, hey, today we're one. You know what I mean? That's it. That's the only way this experiment works. Step 2. So that's first step 1. Identify the executive orders, get rid of the executive orders, get your cabinet officials on them, immediately start changing the language and implement colorblind equality type language. Number 2, you got to move fast. President Trump and his cabinet has to move fast. To get these DEI programs going. He talks about terminating the employment of all policy officials responsible for those programs, and you do that effective immediately. And the reason why you want to do this, the reason why you want to do this and do it fast, you don't want any of these bureaucrats burrowed in that are going to do their best to continue to work to resist President Trump and his administration. The guy did not get a fair shot in his first administration to be the president of the United States. He won overwhelmingly this time. The guy deserves the shot to be the president of the United States. Obviously, he's going to be the president of the United States, but you shouldn't have these people burrowed in these bureaucracies that are a bunch of unelected bureaucrats trying to circumvent the will of the people, basically. So Chris Rufo says, move swiftly to shut down all DEI programs, terminate the employee of all policy officials. So all of these policy officials that are responsible for these programs, fire them effective immediately. All right. So there's an advantage to moving quickly. You want to get ahead and stay ahead of the media storm that is going to come. And so that'll help out. And also that's when the public is most behind you. So the public right now, Trump has a lot of wind behind his back. When he gets in office, he'll have a lot of wind behind his back. He's got to take advantage of that, he and his administration, in order to move quickly to get this stuff out of our system. Basically, what Christopher Rufo said is in the new College of Florida, where he's on, I believe, the board. He said, they became the first institution to get rid of DEI in America, to abolish DEI. And then they got all the frenzied and hysterical headlines and fierce public debate. But he said they were able to cut the debate short because they acted so decisively. All right. And then they effectuated their policies immediately. So what they did is the policy was issued. All right. So, replace DEI with colorblind, equality, whatever. The department was terminated. So any DEI department hires or whatever you have, terminate their jobs right away. And then and the director was pink slipped. So the departments terminate the policies. Terminate the policies, terminate the departments, and then terminate the directors of those departments. And you do it all in one fell swoop. You don't do one week and then wait another week. You want the media storm, if it's going to come, you want it to hit fast, because the next day you're moving on. And then Democrats will be like, oh my God, what just happened? What just happened? And then they got to keep up with this news. That's what you want. The third step, win the fight in the press. He said, here again, our policy at New College of Florida is instructive. Progressive media outlets tried to turn our elimination of DEI into a negative news cycle, but we outwitted them by speed and substitution. Because we worked so quickly, we ensured that the stories about our policy were part of a single rather than an ongoing news cycle, which is basically what I just mentioned. We also paired our abolition of DEI with a replacement policy, and that was the colorblind equality. All right. Finally, what they did, and by the way, Americans support getting rid of DEI 70 to 20%. So you want to act quickly on this stuff, because Democrats are going to be playing the violin in order to try to regain power in the House in 2 years. Finally, cabinet members, he says, should take advantage of the frenzy that will surround the new administration's various policies and personalities. So while the media is focused on policies and personalities, get rid of the crap that we need to get rid of. That's how you abolish DEI and all this woke crap that's inside of our government. All right. And he says, if you abolish DEI, while it's important, he says cabinet members should take advantage of the inevitable frenzy that will surround the new administration's various policies and personalities. Abolishing DEI, while important, will register as a secondary headline. All right. So you basically work so fast, they just pay attention to other things. All right. So that's done. Another thing, San Diego County declares themselves a super sanctuary county. We've seen plenty of mayors doing that. Again, we're talking about the resistance of that still remains inside of the federal bureaucracy in Washington, D.C., but it's spread. It's in the Democrat Party. Some of these mayors, a lot of people are asking, these mayors they just don't get it. They just don't get it. They were wiped out in November. No, they get it. They don't care. These are authoritarians. These aren't your average Democrats. So now you have the San Diego Board of Supervisors that's saying, San Diego County is going to be a super what they're calling a super sanctuary city. But there's ways to get past that as well. Again, these people want to try to resist, but we got to make sure that they do not resist. Here's the thing. Jonathan Turley wrote about this, and he talked about, the Boston mayor, the Baltimore mayor, the mayor that set it off, Mike Johnson in Denver, when he said, listen, and basically it's going to be like a Tiananmen Square down in this piece in Denver. I'm going to grab 50,000 Denverites and we're going to get in the way of ICE and federal law enforcement taking illegals out of our town. And then Tom Homan was like, okay, go ahead and try it. I'll go ahead and arrest you. I'll take you at your word, because he said he'd be willing to go to jail for it. But apparently, somebody must have warned them that, hey, if you stand in the way of federal law enforcement taking illegals out of the country and you build up a wall of people that may be weaponized or, whatever, that's an insurrection, right? So he backed off of his wording pretty quickly. But some of these mayors are doubling down. Boston and Baltimore mayors also pledged their resistance to helping ICE in their deportation efforts. And but illegals will flood these sanctuary cities. And I think, hey, all right, while we're rounding some up, maybe have some staging areas in those cities, so those cities could be overwhelmed if they're so in love with illegals. I think a lot of these people, they're not necessarily touched or harmed by the damage that many of these illegals do. That's why it was so brilliant for Ron DeSantis to send illegals to Martha's Vineyard. You saw and you saw Governor Abbott brilliantly send a bunch of illegals to New York City. And you start saying, listen, if you Democrats don't want to close the border, get a taste of your own medicine. And it worked. So, but it hasn't worked yet in these cities. A lot of people haven't felt the pain or enough pain as of yet. All right. But so you got these cities that are trying to join the resistance. You still got this mayor of Chicago out there. But now you got Eric Adams. I mean, he came out today. He met Tom Homan today, the incoming border czar. And at least he's not down to get all the illegals out. So we got some work to do with him. But nonetheless, whatever his motivation is, I don't care as long as he works with Tom Homan to get these illegals out, especially the violent illegals out. I'm happy with that. Jonathan Turley writes that Congress cannot compel cooperation without triggering constitutional concerns. In Federalist 46, James Madison recognized the right of the state officials to oppose federal policies, including the refusal to cooperate with officers of the Union. This is basically 10th Amendment stuff, but he talks about cases such as Prince, PRINTZ versus the U.S. in 97, which involved federal requirements that states cooperate on gun control measures. The Supreme Court enforced an anti-commandeering line that allowed states to refuse such federal orders. You don't want a Joe Biden coming into office or Kamala Harris coming into office and ripping away everyone's Second Amendment right. So that's a good decision. It's sad that there even needs to be a decision like that, but it exists. But Carl, you just mentioned to me how the federal government can't go bully the states. No, you're absolutely right. But here's something that they can do that Jonathan Turley writes about. He says this is a two-way street. Just as cities and states do not have to carry water for the federal government does not have to supply the water to the states, obviously, metaphorically speaking. The second Trump administration and Congress can play hardball by borrowing federal funds in various areas for these cities. With their status as sanctuary cities, housing, law enforcement, social programming costs will continue to rise. Many of those budgets are heavily infused with federal funding. So if cities resist or frustrate federal policy, there are ample reasons why the federal government might restrict funding. Now, you don't want federal punishment to go too far, he writes. The Supreme Court has warned that financial penalties can be so coercive that they effectively commandeer states. So unless your left-wing state severely, underwater, that probably won't happen, but it makes total sense. And then, two, the federal government is not required to spend money on services where costs are rising, at least in part because of resistance to the federal law. So there you have it. You flood these people. You flood these areas with the illegals. You let them feel the pain, and you strip away their federal funding. And what's going to happen is if the people around them are going to put the heat on them. It's really going to be as simple as that. People are really going to put the heat on these people. I want to make sure. Oh man, I just did something. I want to look at something real quick. Okay. So we covered that. What else? These New Jersey drones. I want to make sure that I cover that. This isn't part of the resistance, but we all wonder what's going on. You had, I believe it's Representative Jeff Van Drew, I believe is his name, in New Jersey. And he was like, hey, man, some of these things are coming from the mothership of Iran. We're wondering if there's ties to Russia, China, Iran. When it comes to these drones, no one seems to have answers. Federal government officials don't have answers. I would play some video or audio for you, but it's a waste of time because they don't have answers. You had Sabrina Singh, a spokesman for the Defense Department, come out and say, we have nothing to worry about, really. But she couldn't explain it. You had Kirby, Kirby come out today. These appears appear to be manned aircraft, and then he calls them drones later. But there's no one in the federal government, no one in the Biden administration that are able to tell us what these drones are that have been flying over New Jersey and now parts of New York. And it's absolutely terrifying. They're saying, the White House is saying, there's no ties to foreign entities, but there's no ties to the U.S. military. Okay, then where are they coming from? The truth is they have no freaking clue. And that's what's scary. And they have no clue because they have a dementia patient that's still in the White House that's trying to solidify, along with his wife, a legacy as they leave out the front door of the White House. But meanwhile, I think we're vulnerable. I mean, there's no doubt that we're vulnerable to attack. But make sure you continue to look into or watch for this story, because I think a lot of the stories that we've been talking about earlier this week, frankly, I do think this is the bigger story. All right, now the resistance continues. I want to talk about ActBlue. All right, ActBlue, you guys know this organization. ActBlue was actually taking donations for Black Lives Matter. Remember the fake group Black Lives Matter? You still have fake chapters out there of these race baiters trying to earn a living off this. But one of the things that we learned back during the BLM riots and the Antifa riots in 2020, that when BLM was asking for money, they were getting rich, but they were getting paid off. And a lot of the money was going to ActBlue. ActBlue was they were just funneling money to Democrats, to Democrat campaigns. It's really evil, but it worked. And that's important to know. But it was a total scam. Hot Air wrote about it. If you've ever wondered how the Democrats raise so much money compared to Republicans, there's no better place to look than ActBlue, the Democrats' scammy fundraising platform. They write, the platform designed specifically to enable fraud, which presumably is the opposite of what it should be designed to do. The Democrats love to primp and preen about how they are the great defenders of democracy. But any sane person knows that this claim is a complete sham, assuming they know more than a bit about how the Democrats roll. But because the Pravda media doesn't want you to know the truth, most people have, at least until recently, bought the line that Republicans are the party of the big money and billionaires class. But donations made via domestic gift cards is what was happening on ActBlue. So you couldn't match the identity to the person that was donating. You didn't have to have that information. There's been lots of coverage of how much more money Harris spent than Trump, but that is only part of the story. What was truly shocking about Harris's fundraising was how fast she raised money, and ActBlue is a massive part of the story. You guys may recall that ActBlue announced that small dollar donors raised over $27.5 million in just 5 hours once it was announced that Kamala Harris was running for president. And we were sitting there thinking like, oh my goodness. And the truth is, it may or may not have been foreign entities that were involved. All right. So it's pretty crazy. But basically, the scam it's just like smurfing. What the Democrats, it's part of smurfing. Smurfing is what Democrats would do, or Democrat fundraisers would do, is they might use your information and make a donation on your behalf, and you don't even know you're making a donation. When the same way with ActBlue, you didn't have to verify who you were when you were making a donation. So somebody could create a fake name and donate. So there's no telling who was donating to Kamala Harris. That is part of the resistance. Democrats will do everything possible in order to win. The only thing that stopped it was there was a bill by a Republican congressman, and his name, House Administration Chairman Brian Steele, a Republican from Wisconsin whose panel oversees election integrity, told Just the News that ActBlue turned over documents under subpoena showing a major change in September to its donor verification policies designed to protect against illicit money flowing into political campaigns. So once he introduced a bill to stop it, that's when ActBlue was like, oh my God, okay, we got to stop. You know what I'm saying? We can't do this anymore. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're changing our policy. Corrupt as heck. But this is all about resistance. That's what you have to understand. And then Biden is auctioning off. You guys hear this at the southern border near Tucson? Joe Biden is auctioning off parts of the border wall to get rid of it before Trump can get in, so that he will have a harder time building the wall, resurrecting the wall. How scandalous is that, man? These people are so freaking scandalous. It makes no sense whatsoever. Actually, it does make sense. I mean, listen, they want to have a fighting chance. They're completely scared that Trump is going to come in. They're completely concerned that Trump is going to wreck shop, basically. And so, what they're trying to do is Trump proof his administration. They want to fight against Trump, so to speak. All right, to make sure that they still have a chance to come in after him and just basically kind of have a foundation and start back from where they left off. But they're not going to be able to do that, and that's why you have such resistance to people, even like Pete Hegseth. Pete Hegseth with some of the false stories, more of the resistance, the false story from West Point Military Academy, saying that Pete Hegseth never applied there, whatever. Pete Hegseth had a document dated back from, I think it was 1999, that he did apply and he was accepted to West Point. But the ProPublica, a radical left-wing publication or whatever, media outlet called and tried to verify, and people told them twice that no, Pete Hegseth didn't go here. No, Pete Hegseth didn't apply. And they came to find out it was a woman later. Senator Tom Cotton found out that it was a woman that had given the misinformation, but Pete Hegseth had the proof, was able to show the proof. But they're just throwing stories out there because they don't want a disruptor like Pete Hegseth in there. I mean, a lot of these people, listen, we need guys that know how to run the Defense Department. Well, how is that going for us? Because they haven't been meeting their budget goals, or they've been surpassing their budget goals, breaking their budget, spending like willy-nilly, and our equipment isn't up to date, up to snuff. You know what I'm saying? We don't have the submarines, we don't have the ships that we should have, our military, and yet, but that's experience. Well, let's put a warrior in there. Let's put a fighter in there that says, you know what, when I'm on the battleground, this is what I need. This is what I'm thinking about. This is what I've seen from our enemies. This is how we can get ahead of them. We need somebody like that in there. You can always bring people in there that understands that understands the bureaucracy, but I don't want a person from the inside necessarily, or a bureaucrat running the bureaucracy. I'm going to wrap this up in just a sec, but before I do want to remind you guys that MyPillow has some great Christmas specials. So MyPillow is excited to announce that their Christmas extravaganza is finally here. All right, so Christmas is just 13 days away. So you get this season's flannel sheets for as low as $59.98. They won't last long, so get them while you can. They're famous My Slippers. These haven't been on sale for over a year. They're regularly priced at $119.98, but for a limited time, they're now only $59.98, and their 6-piece towel sets are back in stock with extremely limited quantities, only $29.98 with hundreds of MyPillow products. There's something for everyone on your Christmas list. So from bathrobes, duvets, quilts, down comforters, and so much more. If you guys would go to mypillow.com, honestly, I love their towels. That's one of my favorite things. And their pillows, obviously. I love their pillows. I don't sleep without their pillows, to be frank with you. But I love their towels, too. Their towels are amazing, like the old school towels that actually dried you off. Love them. So you can go to mypillow.com and use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, or give them a call at 800-858-0263. Again, use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L, for all MyPillow products. The flannel sheets as low as $59.98. The 6-piece towel set for just $29.98. And there's even more. They're extending their 60-day money-back guarantee until March 1st of next year. So, and plus all orders over $75 or more are shipped for absolutely free. So you can still beat Christmas. MyPillow.com, promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. All right, so let me just wrap this up. We have the resistance. We're still, the fight for the resistance resumes, if you will. The fight continues. All right. So you just have to keep that in mind. This is what we're building up to. Earlier today on Prager's show, I basically compared to what we're going through now in this quote unquote lame duck session, which isn't a lame duck session because you have Biden trying to cement his legacy and trying to undermine Trump. I mentioned, right, that he's literally selling off pieces of the border wall. It's absolutely insane. But this is the resistance. This is the This is the resistance that we're seeing. Even when it comes to this murderer, Luigi Mangione, someone made a great point earlier, and I want to give them credit, but I forget who. But isn't it amazing that they were so willing to allow his manifesto to be put everywhere? Yet that chick pretending to be a boy that shot up the Christian school back in Nashville, Tennessee, you couldn't get a hold of that thing. I mean, it's insane. And why? The reason why is because they want lefties to continue to hate the healthcare system so that they can transition to single payer socialized medicine. That's what they want. That's why they're letting this stuff come out. And then this guy, oh, how smart and how intelligent he was. But apparently, even through his pain, I'm sure his pain probably had something to do with this. Sounds like the guy went legitimate cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs after a back surgery. But the guy was living a really lavish, nice lifestyle, surfing on the beach, all this kind of stuff. And he gets a bad injury, hurts his back, has to have surgery on it. That messes with his back, his hip, his growing. And it messes with his ability to be able to surf, and apparently his sex life and all this kind of stuff. And that tormented him. And basically he went dark and he became obsessed with what would become of his life. He focused on that, and he got into a very dark place. And he started reading like the Texas, good Lord, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. I mean, so the guy got in a very dark place, but I think the media is really hyping this story up. They were trying to use ghost guns because they want to undermine Second Amendment rights. They want to bash these executives. And by the way, there's pictures of these executives, healthcare executives, plastered across Manhattan like wanted posters. I mean, it's totally sick. But understand why they're sharing that story. They want more Mangiones, the leftists, because they're killers or they're violent at the very least. This guy was brainwashed in college, in my opinion, University of Penn. They want to get rid of private health care. They want socialized medicine. They want to focus on the gun instead of this depraved killer. That's what they want to do. And on the other hand, they want to demonize the real hero. We talked about that the other day, which is Daniel Penny. They want to demonize him because they can't have chivalry. There is no place for a nanny state where chivalry exists. Chivalry will get in the way of the left's nanny state. So keep that in mind. That's what they're trying to do. But this is the resistance that we continue to fight against. So I hope I've given you. I want to make sure that I've covered just about the latest breaking news. I think I've covered it all. But just so that you're aware, obviously, if you're watching this podcast, you're listening to this podcast, then you understand the fight that's ahead of us, frankly. Trump rings opening bell. Okay, so I'm just looking to see if there's any updated news that I miss. I told you about this exclusive Biden races to sell off border wall parts before Trump gets in. Apparently, Texas has been trying to buy them for 4 years, and they haven't allowed Texas to buy them, and now they're trying to auction them off. It's just so sad. It's just so sad. All right, guys. Well, listen, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show. Please subscribe to my podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Rumble and YouTube especially, if you would subscribe there, we would certainly appreciate that. All things social media, I'm on at the Carl Jackson Show or at Carl Jackson Show. Really appreciate that and appreciate you guys. And until next time, don't grow weary doing good, and God bless you. And by the way, I will see you guys back on Monday on Prager and back for the taping of the podcast later on. All right, guys, you have a great weekend. I'm going to take the day off tomorrow. So anyway, God bless you guys.